So, like any good bolognese, we're going to start with the sofrito, which is your onions, carrots and celery. And unlike the lasagna, we're going to want to actually finely dice this, trying to get this as fine as we can. Because at the end of the day, bolognese is a sauce, so you want the sofrito to pretty much melt into the sauce. This is your base, your flavour foundation. You know, see a lot of bolognese recipes and it's pretty much the way they plate it, it's half and half between, you know, your bolognese sauce and your pasta. It does not need to be like that at all. You know, you want the sauce to be coated on every strand of pasta, so it's important to get everything as fine as possible so we can release that water in the initial frying process and, you know, bring out that sweetness, the sofrito. You could actually grate these if you wanted to, alternatively, and that will also, you know, release a lot of water quite quickly, which is what we want. So again, with the carrot in half, take your time, just cut a little piece off the side so that it sits flat on the board. Then we're going to pile those flat pieces on top of each other, and then careful, nice long strokes for julienne, and then into your fine dice. If your veg is too chunky, the sauce never comes together properly. Okay, I think celery for me is optional, I've said before. If you haven't got it in, don't worry about it. Don't go out specifically for celery. Okay, so that's the sofrito done. Now we're gonna sweat this off in a pan for about 10 to 15 minutes on a medium heat. We're going to really, you know, extract all that water content and bring out the sweetness. So, pan's nice and warm. We're going to go in with a little bit of olive oil. Just let that come up to temperature. And then we go with the sofrito. So, I'm going to go in with a generous pinch of salt. And that just helps, first of all, season, because you want to season from the start. You want to be seasoning all the way through, but it helps extract that water content as well. And remember, we're not frying at this stage, we're just softening. You want the carrots to go nice and soft, you want the onions to be nice and translucent, and everything will be smelling nice and sweet. Okay, so this is at about 10 minutes now. As you can see, it's nicely softened and it's smelling super sweet. So now I'm just going to grate in the garlic for the last 2 minutes. If I put the garlic in at the beginning, then it would have just burnt. So I'm just going to cook this out for another couple of minutes, and then I'm actually going to remove it before browning the mince. If you use to keep this in while you brown the mince, by the time the mince is actually browned to the, you know, colour that you want it to, then your sofrito is going to be caramelised and bitter and overcooked. And that's not what we want. We want to keep that sweetness in to, you know, the finished sauce. So by doing things separately and treating each element, you know, with the care and respect that it deserves, you'll end up with a much better end product. So out we come. So there's our finished sofrito. So I'm going to put that to one side while we brown our mince. Okay, so here I've got 500 grams of beef mince. This is about 10% fat, 15% fat. You want something that's, you know, got a good fat content so that that sauce, you know, get extra flavour into that sauce. So we're going to put the pan on a medium to high heat this time. Tiny little bit more oil in the pan. I'm just going to break in the mince. Don't be tempted to stir it through too quickly. Just, you know, let it just sit there in the pan for a minute and just get a little bit of colour. We're again going to hit it with some salt to help release that water content. Okay, so I'm going to hit that with plenty of salt again. Again, seasoning as we go. And the salt's also, again, going to help extract that water content, which is what we want to do to intensify the flavour of that beef mince. Only then, once the water's been extracted, can we actually then caramelise the mince. Depending on the size of your pan, you know, I've got 500 grams here and this is probably just about enough for the size of this pan. if I put any more in, then the meat is just, there's going to be too much heat loss in the pan because of the volume that you're putting in there, and your meat is simply just going to boil and go grey and horrible, and it'll, by the time it actually does come to caramelise, it's overcooked. So don't be afraid to do this stage in batches. So I'm just going to let that sit for a couple of minutes or so before I start actually, you know, stabbing at it and breaking it up, because I want to, you know, get that heat back into the pan. So now, as you can see, I'm just breaking it up with my wooden spoon. It does help if you've got one of these flat-edged wooden spoons. Just helps you to break it up even more. Again, this is a meat sauce. We don't want big chunks of beef mince in here, like almost, you know, tough little meatballs. It's a sauce at the end of the day. It's not spaghetti bolognese is a pasta dish. It's not a meat dish. So we don't want any big clumps of meat in there. As you can see, we're starting to get some nice colour and caramelisation on some of this mince now. So just keep breaking it up, keep moving it around. No, I've spent the best part of probably 3-4 minutes doing this. It's not just something you can just do in 20 seconds or so. You really do need to invest the time into breaking this mince down again, especially if you buy that mince from the supermarket that's almost like vac packed these days and it's all clumped together. I think a good rule of thumb is if you think the meat's nicely coloured, take it another couple of minutes, because it probably won't be. You know, the colour is what you want, that's where the flavour is. Okay, so we've got some beautiful colour now on our mince. So if you've got red wine at this stage, you would put some of that in. I don't have any red wine, so I'm not going to put any in. So I'm going to go straight in with some tomato puree. And again, you just want to just break that up and just cook out that kind of raw acidic taste to it. And bring out again the natural flavours, the natural MSG in the tomato puree. Okay, I'm going to go back in now with the sofrito. Smells incredible. We're going to go in now with some passata, or you could use tin chopped tomatoes if you want. Just work that through gently. So now I'm going to go in with 500 ml of water, which is basically the same amount as what I put in of passata. So if you used to put a tin of chopped tomatoes in, I would just then fill that tin up with water and add that in too. Now it looks quite loose, it looks like, you know, I've put too much water in at the minute, but bear with. This is going to cook down nicely. It's not going to probably run as thick as a ragu you would use for a lasagna, for example, as you want this to be more of like a sauce rather than, you know, a layer to put in your lasagna. But we're still going to thicken this down nicely. So a bit of salt and pepper in there while it comes to the boil. Okay, so I'm going to put the lid on, down to the lowest heat setting. I'm just going to let that simmer there for a good 30 to 40 minutes minimum. And that's going to cook down nicely. Okay, so it's been about 30, 40 minutes now. And as you can see, it is cooked down beautifully. I did, after about 20 minutes, just take the lid off, just to allow some of that extra water to escape. If you wanted to, you could just use a cartouche if you didn't want to put the lid on. That'll help control it. It's kind of up to you really. You can put this on a long, slow cook, like for, you know, 3-4 hours if you wanted to. But as you can see, that is cooked down beautifully. So all I'm going to do now is a little splash of milk in there at the end. Sounds weird. Is weird. But it just works. It just adds an extra layer of, I can't even describe it, just richness and depth and creaminess almost. But that is looking fantastic. Okay, quick taste. Utilising those proper techniques at the beginning makes such a difference, you know. Getting the sweetness from the sofrito, removing it, then browning the mince separately, then, you know, darkening the tomato puree, adding it all back in, you know, doing things properly. In that I can taste the beef, I can taste the sweetness of the sofrito, I can taste the tomatoes. All those little steps just give you a much better end product. Here I've got some pasta, which I've just cooked in some salted water. I'm not going to drain this because I want some of that pasta water in there. I'm just simply just going to drag it over. And this portion, this sauce that I've made using 500 grams of beef mince is easily 5 to 6 portions. Like I said, it's a sauce, it's not, you know, a meat-based dish. You don't want 50-50 sauce and pasta if you can help it. So just drag your pasta over, taking some of that water with it. Okay, probably helps if you've got a little bit of a bigger pan, or, you know, having less in the pan. But I'm just gonna ever so gently just work that through. The thing with the bolognese sauce as well is it freezes really well. So, you know, you could freeze this into little portions, and then when it comes time to you want to have a pasta dish, you just defrost it, put it in a pan, and then mix in your pasta, like I am doing now, but obviously on a much smaller scale. Okay, let's plate up. The sauce has beautifully coated all the pasta strands. As you can see, there's not that much meat per portion. As I said, it's a meat sauce. I'm just going to finish that with some cheese, any cheese you want. Obviously Parmesan is probably the more traditional, but nothing wrong with a good cheddar. Right, let's dive in. It's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Proper technique, a little bit of time and effort, and honestly the results are well worth it. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. There'll be plenty more coming up on this channel.